Makeda Davis, and my pronouns are she and her, and I am from Hollis, Queens. Growing up in my neighborhood had its moments, like any neighborhood. I have some really good moments, and I have some moments that were bad. You know, I came up in a poverty-stricken crack era of Hollis, Queens, the Run DMC era, the crack vials in the airs. It was like really crazy shootings, just everything that you could think of in a poor black community. But there's always like really good jewels and really fun memories and family and friends. So that's pretty much how I would say my growing up experience was, full of ups and downs and good times and bad times. Well, the thing about it is I came into that situation from a trauma. You know, my father was a reggae artist and producer, and my father was murdered. I lived in New Jersey at the time of his murder. He was taking me and my brother to a park, and somebody killed him in the park. And as a result of that, I moved to New York. So for a very short time, I stayed in Brooklyn, and very shortly after that, my mom and my brothers and I have two brothers, and we got an apartment in Hollis, Queens, right on 201st Street. And you know, coming from that experience, it was not good at all, because we came from a fearful situation. You know what I mean? Like, your father was murdered, so that, like, I remember that very moment, like, of feeling that lack of trust for the world. So then to come into a community where it was like all of this stuff going on, it was like it filled me with a lot of fear. You know, it didn't improve my levels of trust for people. And we had some experiences, like my house was shot up. Like, I've been through a lot of stuff in my community. Growing up in my community, and being the only girl, like my mom tries so hard to like make me have a better experience. Like, my brothers went to certain schools, but I went a little bit away from the neighborhood, you know what I mean, to a more diversified school. And I could see the difference. I could see like my friends versus my brother's friends, and it was just a lot to deal with. And you know, always thinking that, you know, am I gonna make it out of this situation? You know, I lost a lot of friends in my childhood that were murdered. So it definitely shaped me some type of way. Definitely gave me a lot of anxiety, and I definitely had my share of trauma. My incarceration was involving people from that same community. I didn't even live in that community, you know what I mean? And I definitely feel that being raised a certain way makes you a certain type of person. How you respond to things, you know, what you feel is right or wrong. You know, it's funny because I often like look at like movies that they call African American movies, and like you see all of this type of stuff being like almost like encouraged, like down to Medea throwing grits on somebody. Like, you throw grits on somebody, you're going to jail. Nobody tells you that part. They're not saying you're going to get 10 years for serious disfigurement when you throw these grits. Like, we come from a community where certain things are just normal. You know, you fight over your boyfriend. You have certain types of like behavioral patterns that no one is going to look at like, oh my God, they did that? Like, she called her boyfriend cheating and she punched him in the face. Nobody's going to be like shocked beyond measure at these things. So of course, like, growing up in a certain environment and growing up in the environment that I grew up with, it definitely impacted my life and the decisions that I made, the places that I went to, the kind of company that I thought was okay and acceptable, the mentality that I thought was okay and acceptable. And definitely, you know, if I wasn't from that environment, I don't think I would have made the decisions that I've made that led me to having the case that I had. Well, I had a very, very, very unique situation with respect to my court. So although I was raised in like a neighborhood where like everyone probably didn't get their high school diploma, you know, the best thing that was coming out of most of my friends was a GED. I knew very little people that went to college, like especially from my neighborhood, like outside from the schools that I went to. You know, there were more people that went to college and things of that nature. But When I got into trouble, I was already working for the city of New York in the legal department. I was working as a legal executive assistant. I was working for the city for 8 years. And to me and to my community, I had made it. You know what I mean? Like, I made it past all the nonsense. I never was a drinker. I never smoked weed. I never smoked cigarettes. So I was looked at as somebody that would not ever face the troubles that I faced it. I've never had an incident with the law before, you know, the time of my case. And my case revolves around a fight in a nightclub. And even going to the nightclub wasn't something that I frequently did. I actually didn't even go to the nightclub to enjoy the party. I actually went there to work. Like, my cousin was having a venue. My other cousin asked me to come to work with her to take the tickets, and I ended up at this place, ended up getting into a fight. And as somebody who's never had an incident with the law at all, and someone who initially I was only being offered 2 years, which was like 2 years, I took my case to trial and I got 9.5 years. You know what I mean? Not double, not triple, not even 4 times, like more than 4 times the amount of the original offer, which was like, blew me away. And like, I remember it like so vividly in my mind, like just listening to the judge and like the opinions that he was forming against me. And it was just like at one point he said, you know, I'm giving you this time because you made your mother lie. And it's like, my mother never lied. Like, what are you talking about? You know, just like taking these facts and these stories that, you know, in this limited piece of my life and limited information, and forming this opinion to say, hey, you that has a 8-year-old daughter at the time, you that has served the city of New York for 8 years, you that is the only person in your family that even has the level of education that you have, and who has, you know, even made it this far, you deserve to be in prison behind a fight for 9.5 years. Like, to me, I couldn't really I couldn't find peace with that. I still don't find peace with it, you know. And then not only that, like, I went to prison and I didn't see that for myself. I never in a million, trillion, thousand years would have ever thought that I would go to prison. And I know that if someone in 2005 would have placed a bet, they would have betted everything in their bank account that I would never go to prison. Like, I believe that somebody would have felt confident enough to do that. And, you know, when I went to prison, you know, just traumatized by the fact that I got so much time from somebody that doesn't know anything about me, and knowing that no matter what, no matter if I made a mistake that caused me to be in my circumstance, I was always a person trying to walk the straight and narrow, my father was murdered, my mom was not well, I packed bags in the supermarket at 8 years old so I can give my mom my tips to help feed me and my 2 brothers. But I was doing that to protect my family because I needed to work. I needed to help my mom who wasn't working. And I did all of these things for my family. I made every sacrifice for my family, and I am considered the matriarch of my family. And for someone who doesn't know me to say, you are not worthy of freedom, your daughter's not worthy of having her mother for 9.5 years behind a first-time offense, that was just too extreme for me and too harsh for me to even swallow. And I prayed 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 and I worked and I went to the law library, and I became a strong part of my legal team. And guess what? 10 months later, they called. I went to commissary and they said my unit officer was looking for me, and I went back to my unit and he said, Davis, do you need a bus ticket? I'm like, excuse me, I got 9.5 years. What are you talking about? He said, no, you're going home. I didn't believe it, but guess what? It was true. I got an appeal bail. I bailed out of prison. I left. I was home for over 3 years. A year after they released me, my indictment was dismissed. I did not have a felony. And 3 years, 1 month, and 19 days later, they reversed my dismissal and sent me back to prison to complete my 9.5-year sentence. I went to prison. I appealed my case. You know what I mean? They had a grand jury, they pulled from that grand jury, they represented in front of another grand jury, and the appellate court found that that wasn't proper, and they dismissed my indictment. But of course, that became a case that was like the front page of the New York Law Journal, and you know, it was labeled prosecutorial misconduct and pretty much like stated like, you know, in like prosecutors would do anything to get people to stay in prison, you know what I mean, or go to prison. And of course the prosecutors are going to fight that, and which is what they did, and they appealed it to the Court of Appeals, which is the second highest court, and that court said that there wasn't anything wrong with what the prosecutors did initially, and they took the dismissal back. They reversed it, and I was remanded back to prison. You know, just at a time where, like, you know, like I said, I worked as a legal executive assistant. I came home. I was working for like a newspaper. I was doing some staffing work. And finally, when I thought my life was like getting back together, like, you know, I got my car back. I had a custody battle with my daughter's father. I won my daughter back. And like, as soon as everything seemed to be right where I needed it to be, like I literally was at work and my lawyer called and he said, I'm afraid to tell you this, Makeda, you're gonna have to go back to prison. And I literally passed out. I only did 10 months of the 9.5 years, so I had to go back and finish the time, which is exactly after 3 years, 1 month, and 19 days of being home. It's funny, like every day I have to pray that God, please keep me alive, because I feel like the experience had to kill me. You know, I had to shave off some years of my life because it was that crucial, and that it was too much to not have taken some toll on me, like on my lifespan. And so as I work hard every single day to recover, to, you know, make something of myself, I have to pray, like, I don't want to like work so hard and then feel like I won't even be able to enjoy the fruits of that because I've been through so much that I'm not even healthy. You know what I mean? Like it's really, really a hard thing to absorb. I think every day was a challenge, just being in prison and feeling like I didn't belong there. You know what I mean? Like it was no way for me to feel like I belonged in prison. You know what I mean? Like I didn't feel like I stepped out to try to get into a situation. Like I didn't feel like I belonged there. So every day just being there, just waking up and just being in prison just was like, from the day that I got to prison till the day that I got out, I never had a day that I did not think that I was wrongly imprisoned. You know what I mean? It was never like one of those moments where it's like, oh, you forgot about this part. No, I've thought about that every single day of my prison sentence. And a lot of like, I was really like getting into a strong state of depression. At one time I thought maybe I should try to take some mental meds, like, cause I could not cope with it. You know what I mean? But I also had to, you know, just look at it more deeply to say, like, regardless if you can't cope with this or you think you can't cope with this, it's gonna be over. Then what you gonna do? You know what I mean? Like, are you really gonna just break down and just give yourself no real chance, no shot at life? And I just had to think about it that way, you know. And I remember one time, it's so funny because I don't even know if my daughter remembers this. Like, I called home and I was crying because I was trying to reach her. She wasn't answering. And I'm like, you gotta answer the phone for your mom. I'm in prison. And she's like, Mom, just pretend you're in the army, you know, just pretend you're in the army. You gotta wear green anyway. Like, just pretend you're in school. And I was just like, wow, like, here's my 9-year-old daughter, like, giving me, like, you know, 11 years old at the time. And she's just like, Mom, just like, and I took it like, just think about this differently. You know what I mean? Just like, don't give the power to those kind of thoughts. Think of this as a moment to do something else, like to figure something else out. Like, think of this as a way out of the hood, you know what I mean? And into your own space where you could try to figure out like what your next move is and how to make that next move your best move. And from that moment, I just started like I try to read more. I try to exercise. You know, I signed up to college. I got my degree. You know what I mean? So, you know, and that was it. Just like, and always like thinking of my mom. Like when I always used to say, like, why is everything on me? Like, why does everybody depend on me? Like, why is everything you got to do it, Keita? And she used to always tell me, because you're the strong one. And it's like, that was something that I've heard in my head a million times, like, you're the strong one. So if somebody's telling you you're the strong one, like, I feel like it gives you the fuel to keep being the strong one. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to be the weak one. You want to keep the title. If you got the belt, you want to keep the belt, right? So that's how I went. Every time I heard that, I just said, I got to keep the belt. I got to stay the heavyweight. I got to stay the strong one. So what I got to do, you know what I mean? I got to go to the gym to stay the strong one. I got to read some books to stay the strong one. What do I have to do to stay the strong one? I kept thinking that. And every time I thought it, I just applied something to my regime. And that's how I made it. That's how I made it through. Well, let me tell you something that I think the world doesn't know, and maybe some women don't even know. When I used to go visit men, the visiting room would always be packed, and like obnoxiously packed. Like it's just like all these visitors, all these women supporting men. But guess what? When you come to the females' prison, there's nobody there. The visiting room, 99.4% of the time, is virtually and practically empty. You know what I mean? It's no men coming to visit these ladies who might be their children's mothers. There's no real support for women. You know what I mean? And it just showed me, like, women always have to defend themselves. They always have, and they end up being by themselves. Like the mothers of the world are by themselves. How is that even possible? There are more mothers in prison than there are people that are not mothers. And the visiting floors are still empty. You know what I mean? And not to like knock anybody in my family, but all these men that I talk about, they didn't come to visit me. As the matriarch, as a person who packed these bags, as the person who did all of this stuff, I didn't get one visit from my brothers, from my cousins. It's hurtful, you know what I mean? Because it's like, it makes me feel like, damn, like, am I valuable? Am I valuable? You know, like women that aren't married, women that are just like my baby mother, like, you know, am I worth respect? Am I a valuable person? But just like everything else in my life, and, you know, I come to a place where I'm blessed to have this thought. I don't make it about me anymore. You know what I mean? I make it about them. The reentry process for me was not good, and guess what? It was probably great compared to some other people's reentry process, you know, because I did have one or two friends. I did have my mother. I did have my daughter. You know, there's a lot of people that don't have that. And not only that, I didn't go to prison without a pretty decent foundation. You know what I mean? I was somebody that knew some things. I was somebody that had work experience. You know, I had some skills. And, you know, a lot of people, that's not their circumstance. You know, like, we know this statistically. We know that this is not the circumstance of the most people that's going to prison is not like, oh, I had a career and, oh, I had the best setup. Like, that's not realistic. You know what I mean? So I felt, for somebody like me, it was really frustrating. Like, they have something that they call phase 3. And in phase 3, they're supposed to give you like tools to help you come home and transition successfully. But guess who's teaching phase 3? Somebody that spent more than 3 phases in prison. They like 25 in, and now you teaching phase 3. It's like, so what happens when you go to the DMV? Well, they said when you go, you don't have the experience. There's nobody from the outside world coming into that group to say, hey, you know, you have some questions. I have some real information to give you, some current information. You're talking to somebody, the last time they was home, it was tokens. They never even saw a Metro card. You understand what I'm saying? So I feel like, how could your re-entry be smooth? You know, like, even for me, somebody that has some experience, I was here for the cell phone era and stuff like that. People thought I knew everything because guess what? We don't even realize what we know and how we came to know it. A lot of the things that we do feel just like some normal stuff to do, like normal to use Uber, it's normal to, you know what I mean, put a MetroCard and stuff. Somebody say, how do you use a MetroCard? It's like, what? What you mean how to use a MetroCard? It's like, I don't know how to use a MetroCard, never seen a MetroCard. Where does it go? On the wheel? Like, where do you insert it? I don't know. And so I found a lot of that, like these things that like today, 2 years later, I feel like, oh, okay, I got this. But I remember sitting at my job and somebody was talking about a fire stick, and I swear I had so much anxiety because I had no idea in the world of worlds what a fire stick was. And guess what I thought? Even when I started making sense that it had something to do with the TV, I thought it was some long stick that did something. Then it's like, my daughter's like, hand out a fire stick. I'm like, where's the fire stick? It's right there. I see a little remote. Like, things like that. How would I know that? I don't know that. They don't give you the training. You know, this is more of the assumptions. Like, to me personally, when I think about prison reentry, especially for people who have been in prison for a certain amount of time, I feel like you should be really getting some real reentry experience. You should even be able to leave the prison. If you got 6 months left and you did 20 years, what you gonna do in that 6 months when you go to the mall? Flee? That means you're going to flee on probation or parole. You're going to do it anyway, just 6 months earlier. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes the fears that people have, like even when they was like, oh, this person came out on work release and they did this. Work release, you only get it when you within a certain amount of time of your incarceration. That means that that person could have done this when they finished all their time. You know what I mean? Like, we can't live our society and make our rules based on so much fear. You know what I mean? Like, this is the world. This is the world we live in. People make mistakes. They make them again. But you have to have a mindset of giving people chances. You know what I mean? Because the chances is what makes the chance of making a mistake slimmer. When you have chances, when you have opportunities, that is what positions you to make less mistakes. If you take away the chances and the opportunity, you might have stopped one person from doing something when they was on work release or when they went on their mall trip. But guess what? You are keeping 1 million people from advancing, from becoming better people, because most of the people that go to prison are coming home. They're going to be right on the train with you, right on the bus with you. Do you want them to be better people, or do you want them to come home and have no opportunity when it's the lack of opportunity that likely put them in the prison system? Before I went to prison, every friend of mine known, like every job interview I ever went on, I always got the job. And every job interview I went on when I came home, every job interview appeared to be giving me the job until I told them that I had a background. And even after the Fair Chance Act, it's like you don't have to tell no more, right? Like, that's the thing. You don't have to tell in the beginning, but when you get the job, if they ask or whatever, then you have to tell at that time. Same thing. I got a job at a nursing facility. They loved me so much. They hired me over the phone. Like, as soon as I checked that mark that I had a felony, the lady says, "Oh, you have a felony?" Just like that. And next thing she's like, "You're not going to get like mad at anyone, right?" Just like that. I kid you not, the attitude towards me totally changed. It was like the whole company knew about my felony and nobody interacted with me the same as they did prior to. No one. So I heard about Emergent Works through Justice Through Code. We were told that, Code Cooperative is like a program that offers mentors, tech mentors. So if you were like struggling with learning your coding or you wanted to advance, that you could, go to Code Cooperative and they would like pair you up with somebody that will give you like the one-on-one time that you needed to advance your skill. Also, I also became acquainted with Dino, and he was telling me about Code Cooperative even before Justice Through Code mentioned it. He was telling me about it, and it sounded like, he seemed to be like a little bit more advanced than everyone else. He knew about all the code stuff that was foreign to most people. So I was just like, how you got this far? You know what I mean? And he's like, yeah, I was a part of co-cooperative and da 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 da. So he began to tell me about it, and I was interested because I wanted to advance my skills. It's funny because I was working as an HR coordinator. I actually got my daughter a job working with me as a temp in my department, and her temp assignment was almost up, and one of the directors said, you know what she should do? She should get into coding. I'm like, what's that about? She was like, oh, it's coding. It's like, tech stuff, and they go to school and they make all this big money. And she told us about a school somewhere in Queens, and I told my daughter. We called the school. We never got an answer. And coincidentally, about a week later, there was an email with the program that I was affiliated with, Our Children, and it was just like Columbia University is offering, coding program to students who are formerly incarcerated. And when I looked at that, I read on it, and it was basically like the end goal was to help the formerly incarcerated person get a high paying job. So that's all I was looking at. Like, I was tired of being poor, tired of being broke. Like, even though I felt like, in the past, the amount of money that I was making would have been reasonable, but it's like, if you're making $35,000, like once upon a time, that was like, a fair amount of money, but now it's like, you can't even get a McDonald's meal for $5 anymore. So it's like, I was really struggling, feeling like, dang, I have no wiggle room. Like, I'm so broke. Like, I have no clothes. I have nothing. Like, how am I going to make some money? And, I went in it, just to see what it was about. I'm the type of person that I feel like, I can find interest in a lot of things. So I was like, maybe it'll be interesting to me. And when I went and I figured out what it was about, I found that it was something that I loved. Like, I literally loved it so much. And, I always tell the story, but I remember one time somebody said, so what do you like to do? Since you don't know what you want to be, what do you like to do? I like crossword puzzles. I like research. I like algebra. And they're like, well, you want to be a teacher? I was like, no. Like, I couldn't find what would give me what those things gave me, which people thought was very weird. Like, what are you trying to find, when you say you like crossword puzzles? Like, do you want to make crossword puzzles? But I found that coding gave me that. It gave me the excitement. It made me think about it all the time. Like, when I'm trying to solve my crossword puzzles, I'm constantly thinking. I'll be on a computer researching just to fill in those boxes. So coding did the same thing, gave me the same excitement. And I was like, it was like divine. Like, God really guided me here. Like, maybe all of this was meant for this, because I love it. And it's challenging. It's difficult even, but it's a difficulty that doesn't make me want to quit. It's a difficulty that makes me feel like I got to figure this out. And that's what you want, right? You give so much time to your job. Like, I think it's ridiculous the amount of time that we give to our job. And most people don't like their job. You know what I mean? Like, so you give them all your hours, your good life, your good free hours. Freedom is so important. Like, what you do with your time is so important. You got to find a job you love. And that's what I found in coding. Like, I love it. When I'm up 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 hours, I'm happy. I'm tired, but I'm happy because I'm doing what I like to do it. So my experience, shout out to Vicky New. That is my mentor, and I love her OD. I think she's so smart. And let me just tell you a little background story, because I remember when they paired me with Vicky and they showed me a picture, and I was just like, this girl is like 12. I can't, like, why did they pick her for me? Like, do you see how people like profile people? Like, I feel like she was a young girl, and why would you put this little girl with me, right? That's how people look at people. Like, for whatever reason, they make their judgment. They feel like it's not a proper fit, but guess what? Someone knew what they were doing because we were a proper fit. She made me want it. She was patient. She was smart. And she kept me going. She kept me challenged. Like, I loved our meetings. I love her. I loved meeting with her. She made me love Emergent Works. She made me love everything about the people involved in it. Like, I love Emergent Works more than everything else. Like, I really do. Like, because that program, I feel like, planted, like, not only the seed of, like, or not planted the seed, but blossomed that seed, but they also made me feel like I had somebody, like I feel like I had support, like almost like I have some people that care about me, that care about my journey, that really care. Like they're not just here just like, oh, this is a job for me, but it's like I felt a sense of community and support, and I feel like I could always reach out to my mentor. Like she's probably not even technically my mentor anymore, but I still could reach out to her, and I don't feel like any reservation about reaching out to her, reaching out to Army, reaching out to Alex when she was here. Like, and that just made me feel like I was a part of a community that I belonged in. Like it made me feel like I had a sense of family as somebody coming from prison, legit feeling like I didn't have a sense of family anymore because I have been so disconnected from my family. So now I feel like I'm a part of the tech community. I'm a tech family member. I have a tech cousin and a tech aunt and a tech uncle and my tech brothers, and we teched out. And I'm like, and I'm super, super happy about that connection. Like I look forward to like, you know, when I had no time, now I feel like I can't miss my sharing circles. Like I have to be a part of it because now my heart is vested in the mission, and it's just like I love this so much, and I'm so grateful. Well, I feel like what it taught me is that I am not alone. It made me feel like, you know, sometimes you might have people and you still feel alone, but it taught me that I'm not alone. Like, and it taught me not that I'm not alone just because I got them. Like, you're just not alone. You know what I mean? Like, it made me remember that there is good in the world, and there are people in the world, and people that want to see you do good. You know what I mean? And vessels, because there might be people that are helping you do good that don't really have, are really not vested in that, but they're still a vessel. They're still a part of the plan to make you good. So it just highlighted that, like, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes we don't understand why things come into our lives, but there's a greater meaning behind it. And I feel like this program helped me to see that. Like, it really taught me, and it also taught me perseverance. You know what I mean? Like, it made me feel accountable. Like, they don't just let you off the hook. You know what I mean? You know, you feel their presence, and it makes you want to be present. So I feel like it taught me that. It taught me that you got to be ready to run. Like, every time I think of the name Army, it just makes me feel like I'm a soldier in the Army. You know what I mean? And you can't just be a soldier in the Army just sitting back. You got to get up. You got to eat right. You got to exercise. You got to be ready for whatever comes. You got to be prepared. You got to be trained. You got to be dedicated. You got to be sacrificial. All of these good things that you have to be when you're down with the Army. So I feel like the name Army just suits you up. Like, once you hear Army, you got your camouflage on, you got your field boots on, and you're ready to go. So I learned a lot just absorbing like everybody's role in this, and just and actually seeing it change a life. You know what I mean? I've seen, my roommate was in this. She's working now for Dropbox. She's making good money. She has a young daughter, and their lives are going to be okay through this program, through what this program gave to them. And, you know, that's priceless. You can't even pay that back. So in 5 years, I definitely see myself as a successful software engineer. I see that for myself in 5 years. I see myself working with some really major projects. I did an interview for a magazine, and in that interview I said, like, I would love to see a reentry app that's more community, right? So this is a community program. I want to see a reentry app that's a community, the Facebook for reentry, not just an application that has resources, an application where people could say, hey, Marcus, what's up? What are you doing? I saw you in that suit walking down that block. Are you going to an agency? Did you get a job? Are they hiring? Like, did you have difficulty getting your ID? I showed my state ID and they told me that wasn't valid proof. Do you have the paperwork? We need to be able to talk to these people. We need to talk to people that are like us. You know what I mean? That understand what we're going through. Our families are not going to understand what we went through if they hadn't gone through it. They may think they have an understanding, like empathy. Empathy doesn't mean you necessarily understand. It's trying to understand, trying to put yourself into somebody else's shoe. But understanding is a whole nother ball game. So I want to create that app. I want to, build on maybe an app that's close to that app that I haven't come across, make it more accessible. And I want to be a part of, I want to learn this so much that I can help improve everything that we need improvement in. I want to be a part of advancing a lot of different things that are going to, make my community more resourceful, make my community, build my community. I want to be a leader, and I also want to teach code. So that's one of my things. People say the mind is a muscle. You got to work that mind. And you got to learn things in order to work that mind, to strengthen that mind. And the mind is the most powerful thing that you have. So let's learn. And this is something that is going to work your mind. So that's more important to me than even just taking this route for the money. It's a good route because it's working your mind. And your mind is what you need to preserve. Your mind is your most powerful tool. And I want to see you guys in this because I want your minds to stay strong. And I want you to have some of the rewards of this life so you can live the life that you want to live, and be productive and be happy. You know what I mean? Being financially secure is a part of being happy. Stay encouraged, stay working, and get to the prize. I am Makeda Davis, and I am a former mentee and a proud member of the Emergent Works family. And I believe that excellence in code can come from anyone.
Baby, you can do it.